The demolitions committee of Project Mayhem wrapped the foundation columns of a dozen buildings with blasting gelatin. I know this because Tyler knows this.
Fight Club's ending is about to be spoiled, so get ready. These seem like two different people, Tyler and who I'm gonna call Jack.
I am Jack's medulla oblongata.
The twist is that Tyler is an alternate persona of Jack.
Because we're the same person. That's right.
With everyone else believing this is Tyler.
Say my name.
Tyler Durden, you freak.
Jack and us, the audience, think they're different people. But it turns out Tyler is essentially the right hemisphere of Jack's bicameral mind.
This is crazy.
So go crazy.
Okay, so what is the bicameral mind? I'll try to give a 1-minute synopsis of a theory that its originator, psychologist Julian Jaynes, spent 468 pages explaining. It's one of those theories that sounds crazy at first.
Man, you look like a crazy person.
But the more you learn about it, the more sense it makes. So in ancient times, roughly 9000 to 1000 BC, people confronted by new situations would experience auditory, verbal hallucinations, or in common parlance, voices.
If you build it, he will come.
Directing their actions.
Sometimes Tyler spoke for me.
Fell down some stairs.
Fell down some stairs.
Created by the right side of the brain, but attributed by the left side to an external source, usually a god, leader, or ancestor. And during the transition to modern consciousness, which Jaynes defined as
an analog I narratizing in a mind space,
introspection emerged for the first time in human history.
That's an interesting theory.
Evidence can be seen in artwork and literature, from the earliest books of the Old Testament to the latest, and from the ancient Iliad to the more recent Odyssey. There's a general trend in the first 2 millennia BC. From initially shaping the world, deities shifted to verbal communication, then spoke only through vessels like oracles and prophets, and finally to a state of silence. As humanity's introspection deepened, the divine commands waned, leaving us with existential angst. If we look back before around 1200 BC, we find so much certainty. People converse directly with their gods, but after it's a lot of, where have the gods gone? Why aren't they speaking anymore?
Like this video. Our fathers were models for God. If our fathers bailed, what does that tell you about God?
You might be wondering how people without introspection could build the great cities and structures of antiquity. But think about how much we do today that is habitual, that we don't have to consciously consider. 2 great examples are driving and typing, activities that require a lot of focus initially and are not instinctual, but after years become automatic. Complex executive functions are possible without introspection. Jaynes called ancient bicameral people automatons because they did not question their internal commands, believing they came from an external authority. There are times when Jack certainly seems like an automaton, when he's barely conscious of his surroundings, just going through the motions, or when his actions seem out of his control. And that's just when he's actually Jack. Obey means to carry out a command or submit to authority. The roots of the word mean to hear, near someone. Hear means it must be an auditory cue, and who's nearer than an internal persona? Remember, Jaynes said bicameral people were controlled at times by
auditory hallucinations.
When we see Brad Pitt, all the characters are seeing Ed Norton. This isn't Tyler, but Jack being controlled by Tyler, i.e. he's an automaton, a bicameral person for the lion's share of the movie. He and we just don't realize it until very late.
We're the same person.
Yet at other times, he thinks of himself in potential future situations. If you recall,
an analog I narratizing in a mind space.
Jack narratizes almost the whole film and uses frequent metaphors to do it.
It was right in everyone's face. It was on the tip of everyone's tongue.
Something Jaynes said was crucial to modern consciousness.
And it's in that agony that consciousness develops on the basis of metaphor.
The agony is uncertainty. In other words, the incessant questioning and endless second-guessing of our conscious interiority. It did feature evolutionary advantages, though, namely quicker and better adaptation, allowing it to eventually overtake the bicameral mind as the primary mode of human thought. I'll cut to the chase. Fight Club is a battle, or fight naturally, between the ancient bicameral and modern introspective mindsets. Modern consciousness eventually triumphs.
What's that smell?
But barely and at great cost. And the wild part is that Jack willingly offers control to his bicameral alter ego during their first meeting.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Want to switch seats?
No, I'm not sure I'm the man for that particular job.
Jack admits he doesn't want the responsibility, but neither does Tyler at this point. It's the symbolic,
Can I stay at your place?
Yeah.
when Jack asks to become a guest in Tyler's physical and psychological domain that puts him into the driver's seat.
Stop trying to control everything and just let go. Let go!
Give full control to me, Tyler's saying. In other words, he doesn't want his authority even questioned.
Why wasn't I told about Project Mayhem?
First rule of Project Mayhem is you do not ask questions.
This rubs up against modern human agency, which has been termed a crisis of freedom. Without authority figures telling us what to do, either internally or externally,
You were looking for a way to change your life. You could not do this on your own.
what do we do with our newfound autonomy? If our meaning, our purpose, isn't to obey them, then what is it?
What am I supposed to do with my life?
You'll think of something.
Okay.
So Jack reverts to a bicameral state to fight this anxiety,
For 6 months, I couldn't sleep.
to regain that meaning, as Jane said,
Wouldn't we all like to have that kind of certainty?
which is where Tyler comes in, bringing supposed divine guidance back to humanity. He takes over in moments of uncertainty, which is what we see in these back-to-back shots as he tells Jack, I got this. Tyler never introspects or wonders if he's doing the right thing. He's always certain. He becomes a prophet king, directing Jack's thoughts, speech, and actions,
Tyler's words coming out of my mouth.
with a long-term society-wide goal for extra motivation.
Fight Club was the beginning. Now it's moved out of the basement. It's called Project Mayhem.
Tyler even tells Jack that he could know more if he only desired to,
You decide your own level of involvement.
because they're sharing a brain after all. The importance of the brain, the mind, is rendered throughout. We start literally inside Jack's brain, perhaps seeing a signal sent from his right hemisphere, Tyler, to Jack's obeying side on the left. He and Marla even split the brain into sections,
You can't have the whole brain.
and the closing song is Tyler's utopian vision.
In the world I see, you'll climb the wrist-thick cuts of vines that wrap the Sears Tower. And when you look down, you'll see tiny figures pounding corn, laying strips of venison in some abandoned superhighway.
Evokes the ancient times of bicameralism, when he and probably Jane's would say people were happier, with spiritual certainty and existential meaning. That surely seems like the case for the space monkeys who, separated from their consumerist despair and now part of Tyler's cult, lose individuality,
In Project Mayhem, we have no names.
but gain fulfillment.
How are you, Bob?
Better than I've ever been in my whole life.
Tyler built himself an army.
And a successful army cannot have soldiers questioning and second-guessing the orders of commanding officers. They have become bicameral too, probably hearing Tyler's voice even when he's not present. Once Jack realizes Tyler is an internal manifestation though, his transition back to full modern consciousness only takes about 24 hours, while our ancient ancestors took millennia. And the final nail in Tyler's coffin is our superpower. Flexibility, remember, based on introspective imagination. Jack can't defeat him in a battle of force, as it were. So he talks to himself and reasons through the problem.
I can figure this out. I can figure this out. This isn't even real. You're not real. That gun isn't even in your hand. That gun's in my hand.
He actually is in a good place by the end, at least mentally, finding a medium, I won't say happy, between his early insomniac angst and Tyler's fanatic anarchy. Just as Jack unwittingly gave Tyler control, Tyler returns the favor by offering Jack a way out,
I say let's evolve.
which Jack eventually does by introspecting and taking responsibility,
I am responsible for all of it, and I accept that.
enabling him to overcome Tyler, just as modern consciousness prevailed over the bicameral mind. This symbolizes an essential step for humanity, where we take collective responsibility for ourselves and our path forward. Janes and Fight Club agree on this. Even if we could go back, we shouldn't. Despite the psychological and spiritual certainty of the bicameral mind, we must progress.
Wouldn't we all like to have that kind of certainty? But then we'd be fanatics. We'd be James Joneses or Son of Sam's or something like that. These awful things, because that's where fanaticism leads to.
In an eerie twist of prophecy, fanatics echoed this catastrophic ending just 2 years later. Here, though,
the buildings are empty. Security, maintenance, all our people.
Tyler's final contribution, however, reminds us that the threat of regression to that old mindset is always there.
I don't think we've lost anything that we should try to regain.
This semi-reconciliation with Marla signifies an embrace of uncertainty, because, as Werner Heisenberg discovered, it's a defining trait of the universe.
Are you familiar with Heisenberg's uncertainty principle?
Since we will never have absolute certainty, we must create our own meaning.
What am I supposed to do with my life?
You'll think of something.
Well, thanks a pad load, Chat.
Yeah.
If consciousness worked so differently just a few thousand years ago, what will it look like in the future? Jane said language was vital to consciousness, and written language jump-started our modern consciousness, but only in the last century has the majority of the world become literate. So what will that do to future consciousness? Am I saying consciousness too much?
No, God, not at all.
He sometimes compared children with imaginary friends to the bicameral mind.
Something I think goes back to bicameral mind, where I think everybody had their own imaginary playmate that grew up with them and became their personal God.
Is Tony the one that tells you things?
Yes.
There are certain traces of the bicameral mind in early childhood.
Will people of the far future compare us to their children?
This conversation is over.
I wish to God that somebody would do something to block out the voices in my head for 5 minutes. The voices that scream over and over. Why do they come to me to die? Why do they come to me to die?
Okay.